Why is OpenAI hyping up their math breakthroughs and they end up just fizzling out? Why is their top talent bolting for just a $300 million startup? Apple's stock is soaring near all-time highs, yet they don't have a very shippable AI product. And is Anduril's sci-fi defense real tech future, or is it just vaporware? And also, we learned this week what happens when your code is generated 75% by AI and takes down half of the internet.
With a lot of years in software development, I'm seeing a tech shakeup that could change a lot of different things. We're going to grip into a whole bunch of different signals that it's exposing some of AI's cracks and who's nailing it instead. So we're going to go into this today.
Perfect. Welcome back to our podcast. This is episode 14 with Startup Hack and I. This is my father, where we take our tech, business, and finance conversations and we bring them to a podcast to you. And we have a lot to talk about today. Apparently, yesterday, we saw one of the biggest outages that we've seen in a while with AWS going down. We're going to talk about military defense. We're going to talk about OpenAI. There's a ton to talk about today. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So let's talk about OpenAI's giant math problem that they can't seem to solve. So OpenAI boasted about cracking math problems that baffled experts for years. The reality check is their model just pulled off old solutions from obscure papers. It's like claiming you've built a rocket when you've just found the blueprints. Rival Labs.
Sorry, go ahead. It's all right. Rival Labs called it a humiliating misstep for a supposed leader. And so the interesting thing about this is that what they did is OpenAI made this big tweet saying, the OpenAI executive tweeted saying, hey, we've solved 10 unsolvable problems. And he lit up the internet and he tweeted all over and he was like, OpenAI is so amazing. It can do all this math. And then suddenly he deleted it. And of course, the internet doesn't forget anything. And everybody started grabbing those and pull them. And then the pros started double checking the posts. And actually it was a pretty rookie move because it grabbed OpenAI, grabbed ChatGPT, grabbed an old paper, started dumping out just the results of that, because as we all know, generative AI does not actually think. It actually just grabs stuff and regurgitates it. And that's what it done. It grabbed an old paper, regurgitated a bunch of old results, and made a bunch of the OpenAI executives look like a bunch of idiots.
Yeah. So you're just kind of seeing OpenAI expose some of their tech that they claim. And this is part of the fear that you start to see when technology is starting to crack, and you kind of saw it with AWS yesterday. I don't know, is there too much more you wanted to jump into on that OpenAI math problem?
No, I think it just goes to show we're seeing all these huge audacious claims, and even Elon Musk recently just announced that Grok 5 has a chance of AGI and that kind of stuff. Generative AI is not going to hit AGI anymore. That's going to solve unsolvable math problems. Like, this is generative AI is really high level, very fast pattern matching. It's very good at it. It's very good at words. It's good at pattern matching. It will never be good at physics. It will never be good at math. This type of AI is not designed to that. Large language models are exactly that. They're large language models. And anybody who thinks it's going to reach into AI just because they're making them bigger and bigger is missing. And, OpenAI and all of these are really a fair big wizard behind the curtain because of it. And this is just the latest show of that. But the next latest show is that when the AWS CEO gets up and brags last week, hey, 70% of AWS code is generated by AI, and drum roll.
And then you see AWS completely crash. Let me go ahead and share I think it's a funny tweet. Let me go ahead and pull that up really quick, see if you can see that. But yeah. Oh, wait, there's that one. There's a handful. Let me go ahead and pop them up really quick.
Yeah, and so it turns out that it was something to do with their DNS, and it stuck it into a loop, and none of their websites could resolve. Yeah, so AWS CEO brags that 70% of their code is generated by AI, and within 7 days, half the internet's down, right? And so, like, this just kind of goes to show is like, one, the metric of 70% of their code being generated by AI is total BS. Like, and the thing about it is every time these executives say it, they're like, well, about 70. And as soon as you hear them say about, Google CEO got on, a podcast and said, hey, look, 10% of our code is generated by AI. And he knew the exact metric because Google prides themselves in KPIs. If you look at these kind of things, and you'll always see an about or around or some kind of things like that, it's just BS and they're pulling these numbers out of the air. But the pure irony to this is that within a week, then AWS melts and takes down half the internet.
Yeah. You see a couple other just kind of memes here that the AWS outage is more impactful than the federal government,
which is unfortunately kind of true too, actually.
And then you have AWS engineers. There was just a bunch of funny memes yesterday. Do you understand exactly what happened and what was going on?
What can happen is that when your DNS resolution starts to go down, remember that you're going to Netflix.com and you were expecting Netflix to come up, and Netflix was impacted by this yesterday because they're a huge AWS customer. So you go to Netflix.com, you expect it to do this. There's a whole bunch of DNS resolution of many different sites that it kind of glues things together, trying to simplify this. But when that DNS goes down, it literally breaks the connective tissue between all of the hosting. And so the DNS that was hosted in the US East failed yesterday, and most of their DNS went down, which caused just a ripple effect across the whole system.
And do you know why it went down?
No. And no one may never know. I don't know. They'll probably post some post-mortem on it at some point because these are interesting studies. It just does, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's, not to defend AWS, but to defend AWS, like could happen to anybody. At the end of the day, the whole internet is still very reliant on DNS. When DNS stuff goes down, that can affect anybody.
Yeah.
Because if Cloudflare saw the similar problem, Cloudflare did see a little blip just a couple of weeks ago, and it was also DNS.
And so how do you
the Achilles heel? That? You don't. I mean, DNS is what the internet runs off of. Domain name resolution. So if you type in, startupack.com and you expect it to go to Startupack's website, and what it's doing is it's reaching out to the DNS provider, and then it gets a series of IPs. And in our case, like Cloudflare is a great example of this, and they have a lot of powerful systems. But if the DNS resolution fails, there's nothing you can do, because it's kind of like saying that the gas pedal in your car didn't work.
Yeah,
there's not a whole lot you can do after that.
Got it. Interesting. So are they mostly operational again this morning, AWS?
I honestly haven't really looked a ton because I don't host on AWS. I can't stand their user controls, and I can't stand their permission systems, as we well know. And so it's like, I think AWS is a tangled mess that has tried to become everything to everybody. And I try to avoid them like the plague. But
it looks like you're seeing a big stabilization from where it was yesterday.
Yeah, I think there was mostly two blips that happened, one earlier in the day and one later in the day. And I think they got everything resolved mostly overnight.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, humans had to interact again for a day. It's okay.
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay, let me go ahead and stop sharing this. Sweet. So we talked OpenAI, their failure. We've talked AWS, their outage yesterday. Now I want to talk about this company called Anduril. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. But they have showed something really interesting. And I think as somebody that loves tech and that loves AI, this is kind of a mix between I feel like humanoid robots are another 10 years out. But this to me was really crazy. So I want to go ahead and play this video for you. This video has been out for a week now. But I still think it's pretty nuts. Let me go ahead. Man, I made the mistake of not restarting my computer before we went live, and I'm having my own AWS issues. Okay, I got it. Okay, let me go ahead and do this. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is Anduril. It's called Eagle Eye, and with lethal connectivity, Eagle Eye enables warfighters to command and control unmanned systems and call for fires through a heads-up and hands-free display. Okay, so
Alpha, Bravo.
Bottom left.
RP received and marked. I'm Oscar Mike.
So he had a radio transmission. It looks like he marked something. Okay, so they marked a bad guy over there for him. there's the bad guy car. He marked airstrike. And so you just see this company that's like the Palantir of hardware, and it's freaky, but as somebody that like loves tech, it's advanced tech. I don't know. Do you have any comments or any perspective that you think about that?
I think it's interesting. I like to see tech being, moved into places where it can help to save lives and whatnot. I'll be curious to see how that works in a place where you don't have cell coverage, or in a place where you don't have, like I'm sure that's probably trying to tout some of that, Facebook couldn't get their own glasses to work in like best case scenario. So I kind of think war is usually like the worst of worst case scenarios. So I guess I'm skeptical to think those soldiers are going to want to turn a lot to tech in the middle of a combat situation. My guess is most of them are going to rip it off and try to just start shooting things. But I think it's cool. I think it's cool tech, and I think it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I do like that they're trying to, instead of saying, hey, look, the drone's going to come in and do it for you, instead of still human in the loop, because I think that's the most important thing that we've seen over and over again from any tech system, and AI particularly, is human has to be in the loop. So I do like that they're doing the human in the loop and just trying to do human augmentation instead of just full human replacement, right? So it's not a robot out going to do it. It's human augmentation to try to help make the human better. It's more of, less robot and more of Iron Man. And that I'm a big fan of, because I think that's where we're at with AI. I think we're 3 to 4 decades away from AI becoming something we would fully trust to do it by itself. So that's kind of what I take from those.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. The only thing to that is, I mean, you'll start to see I'm sure that they'll probably be using Starlink in a scenario like this. So I mean, you see this helmet and they have glasses they put on it. You can see how it does like a thermal detection. You can see them engage. It does feel a little bit like Call of Duty, which is kind of crazy, but I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting, and I think that once that company goes public, it's going to be very entertaining, because I think you're going to see like the hardware version of Palantir come into play, which will be.
I think it'll be interesting. I think they'll end up struggling if they want to go public. I think they'd be better off to stay private and just stay government funded, but that's my 2 cents.
I mean, like you might be right. Like, what kind of commercial applications to have outside of war? Or I mean, you can. Palantir obviously has a lot of commercial use cases. So to your point, that might be a good, maybe they just stay private. But
yeah, okay. I mean, there's been plenty of private, well-funded private entities by the government. So
yeah. Okay, cool. So we talked Anduril. Now let's talk. Let me pull it up here.
So a post roasted how models like Grok 5 can't tackle creative coding challenges, and they'd likely, choke debugging into their own messy code. And it was pretty funny. Karpathy dodged a coding showdown with Grok, which was probably a pretty smart move, because his own system that he put out wasn't all that great at coding. And even Andre has actually come out and talked about how far behind AI really actually is, even though he threw in his weight behind a recent model.
Yeah. Are you talking about that Elon Musk and Andre tweet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me pull that up, because I wanted to talk to you about that. Okay, so here's the interaction. So maybe you could give us because I didn't really know the context behind this. So apparently Andre released his own model. Is what you're saying?
Yeah. So Andre released his own model and basically showed how you could, and he called it a ChatGPT 5 competitor. Now it was really, really comical, because he was like, oh, all you need is just A8. And so we'd probably have to go back a step to kind of know the background to this. So last month, Andre released a model that he says is basically ChatGPT 5 and everything you need. So the way that it does MCP, the way it does everything to do internet search, and everything that you need, all baked into one system. So it's more than just a model. It's the model and all the connective tissues that actually require how good newer like generative AI is, right? Now, the funny thing about it is he's like, oh, and it doesn't require a lot of hardware, just 8 H100s. So 8 times H100s, right?
Yeah.
Now, an H100 is about $30,000 to $40,000 a piece, right? I think we've looked at some of those before, and roughly if you're going to host, buy your own server of this, it's about a quarter to a third of $1,000,000, right? If you're going to host it per month, it's about $30,000 per month. That's it. Right.
Wow.
That's all it takes. Right. It's $30,000 worth of hosting per month. Now he did this and so Elon kind of grabbed one of his tweets and said, hey, like you make a lot of good points. People should still learn to code, right? Where ways, because Andre basically admitted defeat and said, hey, look, my model actually is nowhere near humans. We still need to be learning to code. And Elon grabbed it because Elon and Andre are friends, right? Because Andre worked for Elon for a long time, and Elon has an open offer to Andre that says, hey, anytime you want to come back to SpaceX or Tesla, we will welcome you back.
Yeah,
so they've kept in touch.
Deep level of respect between the two.
There is. And so that's kind of the background of this. So that's kind of the background of the tweet if you want to dive into the tweet.
Yeah. Okay. So you have, I still don't quite understand. So I'll let you kind of take it from here. So Elon says you make a lot of great points. And Andre says that he'd rather use and collaborate with Grok 5 than compete against it, though quite similar to chess and, quote, in the limit, speaking of physics, my value add trends to about 0. So is he just saying that what Elon has built has outweighed what Karpathy has built?
So Karpathy is actually pretty interesting because he's very theoretical and philosophical. When it actually comes down to plugging in wires, he's not your guy. And that's kind of what he's trying to tell Elon is like, hey, look, you and I did a lot. I built you a neural net. You're starting to move past even the neural net at Tesla. So I'm not really a whole lot of use to you anymore. So Karpathy's actually kind of jumped onto a little bit of a bandwagon. He's actually trying to go after education now. So most of this was actually proof that, a school system, for instance, could stand up their own AI system for 30 grand a month, which compared to a school is a drop in the bucket, right? And so that's not that expensive. That was part of what he was doing. So he's actually trying to go after that angle and the fact that he can pull money and do all that kind of stuff. So he's moved more towards the executive and less away from like the actual one doing the coding and the one plugging in the wires. So I think that's part of what he's talking about here, is though he's saying, quite similar to chess and in the limit, speaking of physics. And that's kind of a little bit of a hit at Elon because Elon's touted that Grok 5 is going to be able to do physics. And Andre's saying absolutely not. But he's saying that basically he's not really going to be a whole lot of help to Elon on this.
Got it. And so when he said a coding contest, was he just trying to compare models with like Andre's versus Grok 5?
Yeah. And that's what he's trying to do. But what Andre is trying to point out is he's like, look, no, Grok 5 is clearly going to win. I built you a small little system that anybody can use off the shelf. You're building an enterprise system. It's like trying to pit the US government against, a 30-person startup, right? Like it's not even really a comparison.
Yeah. It's cool to see the playful competition between the two. This is kind of what has made tech advance so much, is just the competitive drive between excellent people. So in the actual quote, so if you look up scroll up just a little bit here, toward the top of this, the poster says if the competition were leak code, Andre would certainly lose, meaning Andre doesn't write code. And he says that, right? But if it were about building a complex system, say something like NanoChat, which is what he released, his is called NanoChat, I'd bet 99% of my money that Andre would win. Grok 5 would probably be getting stuck debugging and rage quit itself. And so Grok has not traditionally done super well at code. Elon touts that it does really well, but most of the reports that come in, I haven't spent a ton of time using it. Most of the reports is that it's not doing super well. Claude Sonnet's kicking its trash on most of the benchmarks. Cool. Yeah, no, I enjoyed seeing Andre and Elon go back and forth, and your context there was helpful as well. Cool. Let's keep going here. So let's see. We got Elon. So now let's talk Apple. Okay. Let me go ahead and pull up Apple's stock chart really quick. Let me see right here.
Yeah. While you're pulling that up, Apple surprised me. I'm gonna admit that to me it was like release of iPhone 17 was a lot of ho-hum and a lot of yet another phone with saying, hey, we're going to sell on a better camera. And for some reason, this one took.
So they're about $2 away from an all-time high. I think less than 1% from an all-time high. And that is almost a $4 trillion company. And so you compare Apple with like the likes of NVIDIA, it's a $4.4 trillion company. They're only $400 billion off of the richest company, the biggest company in the world, market cap wise. What do you take of this? And Apple, like the reason I compare Apple to NVIDIA is obviously NVIDIA is not a pure AI play, but they're the AI hardware fueled play.
Did the shovel in the gold rush.
Yeah, the shovel and the gold rush. So using that analogy, what's Apple?
Apple didn't go to the gold rush. They instead were the ones doing dollar cost average, sitting at home, just investing slowly over multiple years. They're the millionaire next door, right? I remember, my dad was a financial planner through most of the 1990s, and he used to tell me, you'd be shocked how many of those tiny little houses over there have a millionaire sitting in them. And I used to, and that's when a millionaire was a big deal, right? Now some huge percentage because of real estate are millionaires, but one of the interesting things about Apple is they've stayed out of the AI game for the most part, and they just keep producing good phones and good software, and they've kept a really loyal fan base, and they're kind of the tortoise and the hare, right? And yeah, NVIDIA and some of the other darlings are the hare, but that's kind of the scary part is, are those the hare? And Apple's just out there being the tortoise, and they just keep doing their thing. And like you said, they're almost at their top.
And do you think if Apple ends up shipping a halfway decent AI product that it'll catapult them even higher, or do you think that they don't need to?
So a report came out yesterday that everybody internally actually shot down, and that QA has been shooting down all the AI efforts because they all suck. And so the top two, I was just reading a report yesterday. I should have brought it with me, but top report that the two internal competitors for their AI product were shot down by QA. Apple has such strict and stringent rules around their quality assurance that the AI can't pass it. And that's the irony to this, is that Apple either has to lower its standards, which we saw it try to do with Apple Intelligence, and it just backfired, right?
Yeah.
And yet they've stayed out of it, and their stock's at almost an all-time high. So
yeah, I mean, people were laughing. I mean, you and I were guilty of it. We were kind of telling Tim Cook that he has to either get in the race or go home, and he's proved us wrong. So hats off to Tim Cook for there's actually this chart. I didn't think we were going to use it on this podcast, but I think that as you and I both kind of admire Steve Jobs and Tim Cook in different lights. Let me see if I can pull it up in the next 10 seconds. Yeah, here it is. Let me share this with you because I think you'll find this interesting. It's right here. Okay. So you have the two eras of Apple leadership. You have the Steve Jobs era that you can see all the landmarks from iMac, the MacBook Pro, App Store, iPad, iCloud. He got it to a $400 billion company. So he added $344 billion over 14 years. In that same 14-year period, Tim Cook took what Steve Jobs created and added $3 trillion over 14 years. So you can see the amount of innovations that Steve Jobs had. And I mean, these are world-changing products. And Tim Cook hasn't innovated a ton. He has not added a lot of game-changing products, but he's added $3 trillion to what Steve Jobs did.
So look at these two, because the interesting comparison here is that Steve Jobs was a brilliant, although mean, he was a mean cuss. But he was a brilliant visionist who could take something and demand excellence to get it to something shipped. Remember that Tim Cook was he COO before? Whatever his position was, he was the one who made stuff happen. He's the one who then took Steve Jobs' vision and could ship and produce. So when you look at the things that he's done, they've all been very safe bets. They've all been but he just is consistently, reliably shipping. And that's it. He's just stayed really reliable. And the company, you don't hear of Apple downtimes. You don't hear of Apple releasing terrible products, right? The Apple AI Intelligence, or the Apple Intelligence, was probably his biggest misstep. And I mean, that was his biggest misstep, is one software release, right? And so it's like when you look at his success, it's been the tortoise versus the hare, right? It's just about slow and steady wins a race.
Yeah, I thought that was I think this was a little good cap
Yeah,
to our Apple segment.
That is fascinating. I think it is. And I think Apple's played it really smart. And if you actually look, Google's actually done a very similar type of thing. And so let me send you a link really fast on here so it's something we can go over, unless there was a couple more things you wanted, because I've got this is a quick one that we can hit pretty quick, but it has shows a pretty interesting thing. Latest trends were released yesterday, and ChatGPT is starting to lose market share at a pretty interesting rate. So SimilarWeb, who's the one who's tracked internet usage for a long time, released their statistics yesterday. And this is a very interesting piece, because as you dive into it, what you're actually seeing is you're starting to see a generative AI pullback. And you're definitely seeing OpenAI starting to lose. If you'll go to page 3 or 4, I think it is, down one more, right there. Scroll up just a little bit. Right there. And if you zoom in on that, you'll see that what's happening here, and this goes to the same type of a discussion, right? So generative AI and its explosion has totally slowed down, right? We're seeing the growth rates start to really slow down. And OpenAI's blue line, actually, you're seeing starting to retreat about 25% year over year. And so OpenAI is starting to lose their crown pretty quickly. And this is the thrash you've seen from Sam Altman over the last 6 months. He knows this. Now, what's the line you see growing in the middle there?
Gemini.
Yep. So very slow and steady, Gemini's winning the race. Now, Google's not done anything flashy. If you notice, they've been stuck on their Gemini Pro 2.5 for a long time. They keep making Gemini Pro better and better and better. Why? Because who owns most of the data right now? If you have one person you think about data, it's Google, right? Yeah. They're going to come back and win this war. And OpenAI's market share will continue to slide. They'll never go to zero, but you'll see this continue to slide, and you will see Gemini continue to start winning that crown, because the one who owns the data is the one who's going to win here. So it's the same story we saw with Apple, right? Slow and steady wins the race, and big and flashy will get you out in front, just like the hare, which is OpenAI. And then you're going to start to see the slips. You're going to see the silliness like we covered.
It's fascinating here. You can see Grok's market share. Grok is this like teal color. I guess I thought this was one color. I mean, they're just so tiny. I can't, it's hard to tell from this visual.
It's true, actually. Grok, actually, for as much as we think it is because of X's presence, Grok is actually very small market share. Very, 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 very small market share.
Yeah, no, that's a really fascinating graph. Thank you for sharing that. That's cool.
This is SimilarWebs. I'll be doing a whole podcast on this on my channel here later this week, because I'm diving into all the analytics around this. But the big thing to see is that OpenAI's market share is definitely starting to slide.
Got it. Yeah, no, I think I haven't used Gemini Pro. I think I might, after seeing this, just start to see the difference.
So me and my developers all use predominantly Gemini Pro, and we use it for a lot of different things. I actually use all of them. I've found the strengths and weaknesses of each of the different pieces. But one of the things that is going to also win is that anybody who's using anybody who has a Google account, right? So, if your corporation is using Google instead of Microsoft for your email, chat, and those kind of things, Gemini Pro is free. So their best model is free if you already pay for that monthly service per user. So to me, where I'm already using, Google on all of our platforms, why would I go pay for another one when the fraction of differences is micro differences? So all of my developers use Gemini Pro.
Well, that's so smart, because they're going to kill OpenAI in the commercial space just because of that alone. And exactly. I wonder if that's why Google's not rushing to do anything crazy, because they know that they already have the commercial market share just by flipping a switch.
And so they're starting to promote it more and more and more, and you're starting to see it injected into more and more things. But that market share, that red line that you see there, that's growing really quickly. Remember, those are months, right? We're seeing that growth over months. They've almost tripled their usage in months, over 6 months. Okay, so that's pretty impressive.
No, that's awesome. And well, I wonder. Yeah, no, I think that's great. I don't know why that's exciting to me to see OpenAI lose a little bit. It's a little exciting.
It's exciting to me because the problem is I'm just anti-hype. I've been an AI realist for, the last 18 months. It's largely what I've built a lot of my channel on, is just that, I'm an AI realist, and like, we use AI, we use it a ton. But anybody who comes out saying anything about AGI, anything who comes out saying it's going to be replacing jobs, any of this is not really, and like really isn't plugged in. And so I think what you're seeing in those use cases is that's a real growth right there. Everything OpenAI has been running on has been hype.
Yep, totally agree. So this week, just to wrap up, we have earnings this week. So we have Tesla, I believe Netflix reported yesterday. Is there anything that you're looking for, any kind of announcements or any kind of clarifications from these companies when it comes to AI that you'll be paying attention to?
Yeah, I want to see the real earnings on AI. That's the biggest thing, is everybody's starting to bury their AI earnings because the crack in the market is showing really quickly that there's not that much revenue in AI. So Google's starting to do this because they have the servers, they have the infrastructure that could do this. Anybody who says that they're going to be making money from AI is missing it. It's a great technology. It's a lot to use, but these hype about these things coming to hundreds of billions of dollars, you're not going to see it. You're seeing OpenAI starting to, peter out at around, 20 billion. They're still saying they're going to hit 20 billion this year. I'm skeptical. So I would say start looking for the real numbers on AI, because I think that the reality of it being actual earning product is not a real thing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we'll look forward to it. Super rapid fire question. Do you think that Tesla should invest into a money losing company like XAI?
Elon's doing that all for different reasons. So I don't necessarily have a super strong opinion. There could be reasons that it could benefit Tesla because they do need the GPUs. And so X is sitting on all the GPUs. So there might be a legitimate reason too. Ultimately, Elon's playing a little bit of 4D chess, as we've talked about here, with the way that basically he's buried all of the X purchase into XAI at this point. And so I think there's a lot of that stuff that's going on, but it's going on at everybody. Like, I'm not acute. Like, I think Elon's just taking advantage of the hype train that is AI right now. And I think he's just running with it. He's got a huge audience too, so he can build a lot of it. So it depends on how much they're talking about investing. So I'm not opposed to them investing. As a Tesla shareholder, I'm not opposed to them investing. Depends on how much.
Do you think it's a little bit like you're throwing good money after bad money? Like, as an investor, if you're investing to Tesla, that you'll be investing into this massive money losing hype pit?
It's tough. I don't know if the money's going to go away. There's so much money, and we've talked about the circular reason, the circular money on it before. I think these companies have propped themselves up in such a way that even though we will see kind of the bubble burst, I think it's going to be more of like a slow deflate instead of a burst. And so even where I've talked a lot about the, AI bubble bursting, we will see it. You're going to there's no way that we can keep this pace, but I think you're going to see a slow deflate because I think these companies truly are in some way too big to fail.
Gotcha. Sweet. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining. Every Tuesday morning, Startup Hack and I go live where we talk, as you can see, business, tech, AI, finance, tech support with AWS, everything in between. Thank you guys so much for joining Startup Hack. If people want to learn more about you, where do they go?
Check out startuphack.com/Spencer. We'd love to help companies build custom software.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. We will see you guys next Tuesday. Subscribe if you haven't yet.
Thanks, everybody.